Dear student, welcome to today's class. And today we'll learn about payment of taxes under GST. Before coming to the chapter, already I have taught you the various aspects of GST, that is time of supply, value of supply, place of supply, and input tax credit under GST, and other some more aspects we have studied. But now the question arises: how a registered person have to pay tax under GST, and that all the aspects have been covered under the chapter payment of tax. So let's start. So first, as you know, the under GST we have paid four types of taxes, three types of taxes majorly. First is the we can call up for interstate supply. The tax is CGST or SGST. For interstate, the tax is IGST, and another is TCS and TDS, and other payment like penalty, interest, and fees. These are the some of the taxes a registered person has to pay under GST. The then question arises: who actually liable to pay GST? Who actually liable to pay tax under GST? Generally, as we know, the supplier is liable to pay tax under GST, but some other person also liable, like we can say recipient under reverse charge mechanism. Government department also like to pay the taxes if the payment is above 2.5 crores to other party, and e-commerce operator in specific supplies. Already I have told in the earlier chapters. So if you summarize into the graphical parts, then we can say the person liable to pay tax comes under two categories. One is general and other cases. Generally, the supplier is liable to pay tax, but in some special cases, we know that the recipient is liable to pay tax under reverse charge mechanism. As like government is also liable to pay tax if government is made payment above 2.5 lakhs to other party, and another is e-commerce operator. So now let us start the how a person pay tax under GST. Is there any maintenance on record or not? Yes, there is a maintenance of record in order to pay tax under GST, but the record is maintained not in physical form but in electronic form, that is under GST portal. That is called electronic ledger. So let us start the what is electronic ledger and what are its types, or start electronic ledger. As you know, in GST has introduced the new chapter of electronic tax payment system, so that all the tax calculation, payment, everything is done through electronically. So each ledger has one of the important aspect which has been introduced under GST era. The e-ledger is a statement where you say what much of cash we have and what much of input tax credit we have in respect of a registered taxpayer. Suppose you take Mr. X is a registered taxpayer, the how much of cash in his cash ledger, how much of input tax credit in input tax e-credit ledger, everything has been shown in e-ledger account. So you don't have to go for any other accounts. So there are three types of ledger account maintained under GST. Always remember, my dear students, that there are three types of ledger account maintained electronically, and where every records relating to your tax payment has been maintained. First one is e-cash ledger, second one is e-credit ledger, third one is e-liability register. So these are the three types of ledger have been maintained. As you studied in accountancy, the ledger has two sides, one is debit and other is credit. As equally here also, the whether it is cash ledger, whether it is e-credit ledger, whether it is e-liability register, that has a two side, one is debit and credit. And these ledger are maintained not offline but online on real time basis. When each and every second, whatever transaction happened, whatever events happen, everything has been recorded in the credit electronic ledgers. So what are these key features of payment of process under GST? If you want to pay tax under GST, what are the more important features are there? So as you know, GST has a e-portal which is known as www.gst.gov.in. Everything has been managed by this website, and it's also a uniform interface. That means whatever data you want to share, you can share with the www.gst.gov.in. Whether it is a taxpayer, everyone is there. Taxpayer is there on the site, government is also there, and everybody is only one site. That means in GST site, everybody is there. Taxpayer is there, government is there, and also GST commissioner is there. So whenever anybody is maintaining payment tax under GST in GST portal, then there is a challan generated for each payment of tax in common portal. So remember, the online payment of tax you can made anywhere, anytime in 24/7 manner. And another is important, here the tax is collected through e-format. Nothing is in physical maintained, everything is in electronically maintained, and that is more important thing is there is in GST era everything is done in paperless, everything is done through electronically. So now let's start the out of the three ledgers, electronic ledger we are maintaining under GST. The first one is the electronic cash ledger. As electronic, as you have studied in cash book on accountancy, the cash book has two sides, one is receipt and other is payment. Exactly, the electronic cash ledgers records what is the deposits or receipt made by the registered person, and what are the amount he utilized from that cash, from that amount deposited that has been maintained. That means you in a cash book we maintain one is how much cash received in receipt side and how much cash paid on paid side. Exactly, in electronic cash ledger we records how much a registered person deposit in the cash ledger or received from the cash ledger on the debit side, and how much the registered person utilize that amount on the credit side. So it's all maintained in GST PMT5. Remember, my dear students, the electronic cash ledger has been maintained in specific a format. The format is known as GST PMT5. So cash ledger has two sides already. I have told you, one is credit, another is debit. On credit side, we have maintained the cash received and deposited by the registered person. On debit side, we maintain the amount a registered person has to pay in terms of tax and interest. So how can you deposit the money in electronic cash ledger? You can deposit through internet banking, credit card, debit cards, NFT, RTGS, cash deposit also made. So another important things we have already maintained, in every payment of tax under GST, a challan has been generated. So what is challan? Remember, challan is a every single challan prescribed for all taxes. Only one challan is needed for every types of taxes, fee, penalty, interest, everything. So only these things is required. If you question arise in or asked in your examination, so what is challan? You just maintain the challan is a statement where we can record the payments and receipt of taxes, refund, everything by a registered person. So it doesn't necessary they write down the steps, so that I am not going through the steps to generate the challan. It is not required for your syllabus. The next is electronic credit ledger. This is the second ledger maintained by a registered person. As the name suggests, it is the ledger which records what are the input tax credit received by a registered person and recorded in the credit side of electronic credit ledger. And as like cash ledger, electronic credit ledger is maintained in form GST PMT02. The electronic credit ledger debited only extend the discharge of liability or refund of unutilized amount. If input tax credit availed cannot be placed, then we have to discharge it, we have to refund it, and that much of amount has been recorded on the debit side of a electronic credit ledger. And what much of amount we have received as or we have assessed as input tax credit, that has been recorded on the credit side of the electronic credit ledger. The electronic credit ledger, there is some conditions for use of amount in electronic credit ledger. You can use the amount on electronic credit ledger as your own. It has some restriction and conditions, like whatever the ITC available, that must have been on the basis of some tax invoice. Already I have told on input tax credit, the whatever you have available ITC, it must have to produce the equal amount of tax invoices. Then only registered person, those are availing ITC, can if it is found that he is not going to conduct any business on the then the entire amount can be returned back. Suppose Mr. X is claiming for ITC of rupees 50,000, but later it is found that he is not doing any business such type, then the whatever happening there, then the GST commission will return back the entire amount claimed on input tax credit. So these are the some basics of electronic credit ledger. The last one is electronic liability register, which is maintained in GST PMT01. So here all the tax liabilities of a taxable person is maintained. Liability means, as you know, whatever amount a registered person is liable to pay to in tax to GST commissioner or to government, that amount has been recorded in electronic liability register. So it indicates that what are the total tax liability of a tax person of a particular month. Suppose Mr. X has 50,000 of tax liability for the month of August. That means the entire amount has been recorded in his or her electronic liability register. The e-liability register is debited when we pay the amount towards interest, late fees, etc. etc. The how to maintain discharge the liability of a taxable person means is there any order to discharge the liability of taxable person? Yes, there is an order. in that such order, a taxable person has to discharge his liability. Means a taxable person has to pay first his tax and duties. After tax and duties, then he has to pay tax and he has to pay first the tax and duties of previous year. Then he has to pay the tax and duties for the current year. After that, then any demand arise under section 73 and 70. This is all called, we can say, the order of discharge of liability of taxable portions. So now question arises, how a person making liability, means how a person, registered person making tax liability, what are the manners? There is some manners, let us discuss now. So a taxable person can pay the tax through two ways. That means through, if the taxable person can pay the tax amount through cash, or that can refund or redeem the tax amount through the input tax credit. Then how can that happen? The first one is through the debit in e-credit ledger. That means the credit balance in e-credit ledger shows the input tax credit availed by the registered person. That means that credit balance can be paid only tax, can be make payment towards the taxes, only output taxes. Then how much amount I have paid on input tax, that has been shown in the credit side of electronic credit ledger, and that amount can be paid towards the tax only, that means output tax only. So that the amount shown on the e-credit ledger, that is in debited, that is debited means that has been paid or towards the output outer tax, and that equal amount has been credited in electronic liability register. So that always remember, the input tax credit available on the credit side of electronic credit ledger can be only utilized towards the tax payment, not anybody else, anything else. Then another way through which a taxable person or a registered person can pay his tax, if a person doesn't have any input tax credit, then he has to pay the entire amount through cash. So in such cases, there is a electronic cash ledger, and on the electronic cash credit side shows the amount deposited received by the credit registered person. So in that case, the equal amount of tax has been debited from the electronic cash ledger, and the equal amount has been credited to the electronic liability register. And one thing you have to remember, that the amount available on electronic credit ledger, electronic cash ledger, can be utilized towards the payment of tax, interest, penalty, late fees, etc., etc. This is the manner a registered person has to pay tax under GST. So if you summarize it, so we can say that a registered person can pay output tax or outer tax through two ways, that can be through the debit in electronic credit ledger,